أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه أجمعين محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أصحابهم الغر الميامين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. We welcome you again to our series titled The Massacre, which is our continuation program from Ashura until Arba'een of Imam al-Hussein. Inshallah, it will be, as a reminder for others, it will be running every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, whereby our muallims, scholars, will be delivering three-part lecture series on a particular topic. Then on Saturdays, we will have our muallima, who will also be doing a lecture series that will be for Saturdays, that is. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the opportunity and the to do this. And we ask Him to continue blessing our efforts and accept our deeds and reward our deeds, inshallah. Tonight is Thursday, so it will be Brother Ali Nchynyane's last night with us on this series. Continuously, inshallah, we will continuously benefit from him, inshallah ta'ala. But tonight is his last lecture on his series, which he aptly titled The Colour of Karbala. We have really learned a lot in the series in the past two nights. First night it was the Aryanization of Islam. Last night it was a discussion, or rather a lesson on how Shahr Banu, the supposed mother of Imam Zain al-Abidin, is a fictional character. Today, inshallah, we'll hear from him. Tonight, we send our condolences to the Imam of our time for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. As we know that the massacre of Ashura happened on the 10th of Muharram, but continued for 40 days, wherein the family was tormented and taken captive. Now tonight, what we commemorate is the martyrdom of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, about 35 years after Ashura. So that is what, and we send our condolences to the Imam of our time, our esteemed scholars in the Ummah at large, concerned on this day. Imam Zain al-Abidin, this great figure of history, the first author of any book on the rights of humans upon others, upon God. 51 rights mentioned, on rights. This Imam who was deprived of having a crowd around him. It was difficult for him to have a crowd around. You know, people would easily assume that he is gathering an army against the establishment. He did not. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi. So he resorted to teaching people via supplications. And that's why we have such idea and so many other du'as. But one interesting point about Imam Zain al-Abidin, maybe this will take a slot for the hadith that we usually read at night. One detail about Imam Zain al-Abidin that is very interesting is that history records that every year he would buy 1,000 slaves and set free 1,000 slaves. That's the only crowd of students. But why buy and then free them? First of all, it's because I always tell people that Islam only endorsed slavery to abolish. So it endorses slavery, the buying of slaves, the selling of slaves, for one reason, only that one day it may be abolished. And alhamdulillah, that is what happened. But also, that is the way by which the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that was the method that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam used to spread the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. So these 1,000 slaves that he buys every year, he teaches them and trains them for a year and then sets them free. So then when they are set free, they go to wherever they go, whether they stay in Medina or they go to other places, they go there and they are now teachers. They are now muallims. They are now sheikhs. They are now propagators of the religion of Islam. So just something interesting. Somebody once said that if this is the case, that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam used to do this, how can we actually say that Shias are minority? Could it not be perhaps that Shias are majority, but because we believe in taqiyya, don't go out and showing everyone that we are Shia? Because our Imam told us that kunu du'atan lana, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, kunu du'atan lana bighayri alsinatikum. Be callers to us without using your tongues. Be callers to us. So it is possible, plausible, that in that way Shias could have been majority at the time. This would explain how some traditions found today only amongst Shias, very far places. Anyway, that is Imam Zain al-Abidin, the one known for his ibadah, the one for his devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his worship, and so on and so forth. This great personality of history, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant us his ziyarah. Grant us his ziyarah in this world and grant us shafa'ah in the next world. Allah ta'ala. Imam Zain al-Abidin had a very interesting, very, very interesting life. It is imperative upon us as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam to learn about him. Pivotal, because after him, basically, he was the only one left from Al Muhammad. And then, but the teaching continued, you know. Ruhi lahu. On that note, inshallah, we will hand over to our beloved brother, teacher, give us his lecture tonight. بفضل الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من شر الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين وباعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين، لا سيما خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: ومن آياته خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف ألسنتكم وألوانكم إن في ذلك لآيات للعالمين. وقال أيضا: يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to continue with what we were speaking about for the past few days. The first day, if you remember very well, I was speaking about the Aryanization of religion, because it's very important for you to understand the stages of my lectures. The first stage is where I was explaining how Islam or how Islamic literature got infiltrated with racist reports and racist narrations, particularly those that were racist towards blacks. And the Quran is immune of this. And I said, inshallah, one day, when time will permit, when we have the opportunity, we will, inshallah, present a series where we actually explain that the prophets, alayhimus salam, Adam, Abraham, Noah, Lut, Ishaq, Ismail, Yaqub, Yusuf, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa, all of the prophets, particularly the prophets of Bani Israel, they were from Africa. Inshallah, that is a topic for some other time. Inshallah. Now, the reason why I presented the first talk is that I wanted to explain and produce proof that there are numerous narrations that are attributed to the Prophet, attributed to the infallibles, but of course they are not from them, that show a very racist outlook to blacks. And we will get to that later as to why that is the case. That is if we do have time, inshallah. And then on the second lecture, I presented a talk about Shahr Banu. Shahr Banu, as we know, she is, according to history, she was a Roman princess, sorry, a Persian princess. Persian princess, and who was taken as a captive from Persia, and then she was taken to Arabia, and then the story goes on that she became the wife of Imam al-Hussein, and we proved that from historically speaking, logically speaking, that she is a fictional character, highly likely that she might not even have existed. So that passed. Now today we are going to talk about another character, and his name is John ibn Huwai, and he is considered to be black. The reason why I chose two characters, and more especially, and if you look at my topic, the title of my theme was The Colour of Karbala. The reason why I named it The Colour of Karbala, also, as you can see, is that I am trying to show that the revolution, the uprising of Imam al-Hussein, is not a revolution that was racial, you know. it was not a revolution that was there to empower whites or blacks or anybody, but rather it is there for everybody. Anybody can implement it and use it as a means of self-reformation. So that is why I chose two characters, one character who happens to be considered to be white and of a superior stature, and the other one happens to be black and of an inferior stature. So I chose two characters of two extremes, one black and inferior, one white, superior. So the whole idea was that I wanted to expose what historians or what Muslim racists were trying to do by creating such personalities. Now, for today, I'm going to be focusing on a character who is called John ibn Huwai. Now, it is reported that John ibn Huwai was killed in Karbala. He was one of the martyrs of Karbala. His story is as follows. Inshallah, I will quote what the narration says. The narration reads as follows, and you can read it in numerous Maqtals. One of the Maqtal is the Maqtal of Muqarra, which is very famous Maqtal. But you can also find it in other Maqtals. Maqtal is a book that has that reports the historical reports that happened in Karbala of all of the martyrs or most of the martyrs. Now, the story of John is as follows, that when he was in Karbala, that when John wanted to go and fight, Imam al-Hussein told him that, "Oh John, anta fi idhnin minni, you are free. فإنما تبعتنا طلبا للعافية, and you have followed us for a very long time while seeking well-being, while seeking عافية. فلا تبتل بطريقتنا, so do not continue in our path. فقال يا ابن رسول الله, and then after that he said, O son of the messenger of God, أنا في الرخاء ألحس قصائقكم. He says, O son of the messenger of God, I have been in pain or hardships, licking your tables. وفي شدة أخذلكم. But now I have to, he says that in hardships or when things were happy, when things were good, I was licking your bowls and I was with you and I was licking your tables. But now that you are about to be in hardship, difficulty, as you're about to be martyred in Karbala, I must betray you. So he says, no, I will never betray you. Then he says the following words, Inna rihi lanuntin. My smell, my stench is very bad and is very foul and it reeks. I smell very bad. Wa hasabi lalaim. And my lineage, my genealogy is inferior. It's wicked, it's foul, it's very low, ignoble. Walawni la aswad. And my color is black. Fatanafas alayya bil jannah. So blow unto me or breathe unto me paradise, Jannah. Fayatibu rihi, so that my smell can smell good. Wa yashrafu hasad, and that my lineage can be of nobility. Wa yubayyidu wajhi, and that my face can be white. لا والله لا أفارقكم حتى يختلط هذا الدم الأسود مع دماؤكم. I swear by God, I will not separate from you until this black blood of mine mixes with your blood. Then the narration says, ثُمَّ قَاتَلَ حَتَّى اسْتُشْهِدَ. And then he fought until he was martyred. So here, the narration continues. It says that Imam al-Hussein, when he stood after he passed away, after he was killed, after John passed away and he was killed, Imam al-Hussein said, Allahumma bayyid wajha. Oh Allah, whiten his face. Wa tayyib rihah. And make his body to be fragrant, make him to smell nice. وَاحْشُرُهُ مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. And resurrect him among the righteous ones. وَعَرِّفْ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. And make him to be known by Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. So this is what the story says. And then it is said that his body remained in Karbala after the killing, after the martyrdom. It remained in Karbala for 10 days without being buried. But when people were passing, but when people were passing by the corpse of John, they said, the narration says that he became white, that that John became white, and also his body was smelling like musk. So mashallah, he was smelling amazing, and he also became white after 10 days when people were passing by his corpse. So that is another narration that we have. I'm laughing because of the text that I'm seeing. I'm not laughing because of what I'm saying. So, so that is the narration. Number one, the reason why we say that John was a fictional character is based on the following facts. The first thing is the fact that John is limited to being called a slave. His life is just limited to slavery. Now, his life being limited to slavery is witnessed in numerous occasions, numerous narrations. Many scholars, when they go on the minbar, especially during the days of Muharram, Ashura, when they narrate the story, or when they narrate the narrations or the stories that happened in Karbala, one thing that they always make sure that they emphasize, they say about John, is to emphasize the fact that he was a slave. That's something that they always have to make sure that they mention, that no, he was indeed a slave. So even for an example, when you read the Maqtal of Muqarram, it starts by saying that John ibn Huwai وكان عبدا أسود وكان مولى أبو ذر الغفاري مولى أبي ذر الغفاري. So they say that he, John, every time they introduce him, even if you Google his name, John of Karbala or John ibn Huwai, whatever that you Google, you will always see that he's always introduced as a black slave, black slave, black slave. Always, this is what you will find. So his story is basically that he is black and he is a slave, and it's limited to that. Now they introduce him as the slave of Abu Dhar, and whereas Abu Dhar passed away, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 10 years before Karbala happened, or if not 10 years, 30 years. It's between 10 or 30. I'm not so sure. But they still say he is Mawla Abu Dhar. He was the slave of Abu Dhar. To the extent that even when you read the ziyarat say, Assalamu alayka ya John ibn Huwai, Mawla Abi Dhar al-Ghifari. It says that may peace be upon you, O John, the son of Huwai, the slave of Abi Dhar al-Ghifari. But whereas Abu Dhar passed away years ago. So he's a free man. Why is it that you have to mention that he is a slave? Why do you have to emphasize that he is a slave? Which is also something that that begs the question, or that has a question mark, you know. And also in addition to this, he is introduced as, although let me clarify, because he is called Mawla. Now, the reason why he's called Mawla Abi Dharr al-Ghifari is because the Arabs, after a while, there was a time when they stopped calling a slave an abd. So out of just respect and courtesy, they called them, for an example, Mawla. And that was out of, it's like a form of courtesy. In South Africa, for an example, a woman that cleans your house, or a woman that, for an example, is a nanny, you know, if ever you introduce her, I mean, some of you are probably familiar with this. If you are introduced her and she is the same age as you, and you introduce her people, you say she is my sister, or you say that if they are younger than you, you say he or she is my child, or he or she is my daughter. You know, respect. Now, the same thing for slaves, they call them, just not to humiliate or denigrate the person, you know, so they would introduce him like that. So, however, the point is this, is that why is he referred to as the slave or the Mawla or Abu Dhar? Whereas the story goes as follows, that after Abu Dhar passed away, the story is that Imam Ali was the one who bought John ibn Huwai. After he bought John, he gave him to Abu Dhar to be his slave or to be his servant. After Abu Dhar passed away, then he served Imam al-Hassan. After he served Imam al-Hassan, he served Imam al-Hussein. And then after that, Imam Zayn al-Abidin. So in Karbala, he passed away. But when he is introduced, they introduce him as the slave of Abu Dhar. Why don't they say the slave of Ali? Or don't say the slave of Hassan or the slave of Hussein? Why do they say the slave of Abu Dhar? Which is also something that we should place a question mark on, and that is also something that is a red flag to show that this might be, or this is, a fictional character. The emphasis also is only placed on John ibn Huwai. He's always singled out by his slavery or his slavehood, whereas other members are not called slaves. There are many people, numerous people who are followers of Ahlul Bayt during Karbala, before Karbala, after Karbala, that were slaves. But however, they were not of African descent. They were not Africans. They were not Habashi. But it's as I said yesterday when I was speaking about how slavery and blackness is made synonymous in Islamic literature. If you're black, you're a slave, and if you're a slave, you're black. And I remember once when I was in Hausa, I don't know if I mentioned this some days ago, or if not yesterday. When I was in Hausa, I remember we were going for the ziyarah of Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, and one of my school principal was saying that Imam al-Rida should be a source of pride for you guys as Africans, because Imam al-Rida's mother was African. So he told them. And then there was also that thing that where they said that no, even Bilal was also African. Even this was African. Even John was African. Even such and such Fitba was also African. Even such and such a person were African. And then they even went to the extent, one of the principals said that even Yasir and Ammar and Sumayya, Ammar bin Yasir and her father and his father and his mother, they were also African. But they were not African. They were actually from Yemen. Ammar bin Yasir and Sumayya were from Yemen. They were not from Africa. But my school principal said what? He said they were from Africa. Why? Because they were slaves. Because Ammar bin Yasir was a slave. Yasser was a slave, and Sumayya was slaves. So it has become synonymous that when you are black, you have to be a slave, and when you're a slave, you have to be black. This is how it is in Islamic literature. I don't know how the Najashi of Ethiopia he was a survivor of that. And that is why if you look in literature, I think this was brother Majnoon, brother Abdul Hakim Mutseli. He once said this. He casted doubt on the fact that Luqman was a slave. He says he does not believe that Luqman was a slave some years ago, you know. And the reason why, and it makes sense why he would say that, because all the time, every time when a figure is black, they have to be a slave. You know, so Luqman, who was a prophet, and he has an entire chapter mentioned of him, and he has an entire chapter in the Holy Quran, he is also a slave, you know, he's also a slave. How is it that it's a coincidence that each and every black person in history has to be a slave, you know? So it's very problematic. So that's the first point. The first point is the argument of him being singled out as the only person that's a slave. By the way, Salman al-Farsi, for an example, he was also a slave. He was also a slave. But after he was freed and after he was bought by the Holy Prophet, there is a movie about, Salman al-Farsi called Ruzbeh. It's in Farsi. I don't know if it was translated into English. And the Holy Prophet bought Salman al-Farsi. After he bought Salman al-Farsi, you will never hear, we've never heard in history that he was called Salman the slave, you know. And that is why I quoted the narration in the first night. I quoted the narration that says that obey your commander or obey your Amir, even if he is an Abyssinian slave. Why did it not say even if he was a Persian slave? Or why didn't it say just even if he was a slave? But why is like Abyssinian and slave, why are they synonymous? So that is also a very interesting point to look at. So Salman was also a slave, but however, I'm sure some of you are watching this and you're like, yeah, Salman was a slave, but they were Roman slaves, they were, Persian slaves, they were Turkish slaves. Even in Karbala, there were slaves of different origin, but the emphasis is only placed on if you're black. And that is why even, for example, Tawa, the woman or the lady who hosted Muslim Ibn Aqil, she was also a slave, but you'll never hear in the Maqtals when they speak about the history or the events of Karbala, where they say that she was a slave. You'll really hear that. Or maybe she might be referred to as a slave, or they might make mention of that, but however, they will never say that Tawa are the slave. So that is the first issue of slavery. Number two is the fact that the name itself, that is, who is his name? So there are numerous narrations about who his name is, but there is even something, you know, or something. What do they say in Zulu? I don't know. Anyway, let's forget about that. His name, number one, is Juwain. They say his name is Juwain. That's the first one. The second one, they say his name is Huwai. That is the second one. The third one is that his name is Juwain, the son of Abu Malik. That is number three. Number four is that they say his name is John. So it's either Juwain, Huwai, or Juwain or John. So four possibilities. Now, you might say that, no, but now you're blowing things out of proportion by saying this. Why are you casting doubt on his existence, whereas it's just a name? I mean, it's not a big deal. True, it's not a big deal. But however, this is a big deal. Why is it that the name John coincidentally means black in Arabic? The name John in Arabic means black or the black. You know, so if you look at various lexicons of Arabic, and this is something that is very interesting, this will blow your mind, because we said that number one, the first possibility of his name is that number one, he is either called Juwain, or he's called John, or he is called Juway, or he is called, in fact, there are five. Or he is called Huwai, or he is called Juwain ibn Abi Malik. So in the lexicons, the Arabic lexicons, it says that the name Al-Jawn Al-Aswad. They also say Al-Jawn is also Al-Abiyad. It can mean white and it can also mean black. It can also mean light and it can also mean darkness. So that is, but however, the word Jan, which is a verb, it means to become black. Or the word Junay, which was the second name where it is assumed that his other name could be Junay, Junay, is a plural of John, and this word particularly means black. So they say نوع من القطاع وهي طائر سود البطون والأجنحة. They say it is actually a crow. It is the name of a black crow. It is called Junay. So number one, the first thing is that this is very suspicious because number one, his name is John. John ibn Huwai, the black slave. And for them, remember, black is inferior, black is evil, black, as we mentioned all of these narrations in the first night. So number one, his name is either black, or number two, his name is either a black crow. It either means the name of a black crow. So that is the second point that makes it very suspicious. Number one, nobody knows who his name is. And number two is also that his name just means black, or a black crow, which is very suspicious. And then, inshallah, at the end of the talk, you will understand as to why it makes sense that this character had to be created and why all of these things are not a coincidence. But that'll be for later on, inshallah. Number three is that his life is not known. Nobody knows his life, you know? Okay, fine. Makes sense that a person, his life might not be known, but it does not necessarily mean it's not enough proof to prove that a person is a fictional character. I agree 100%. That is the truth. In actual fact, one of the things that I wanted to speak about yesterday, one of the points that I wanted to raise is, if you look at all the wives of the Imams, all the mothers of the Imams, except for Lady Fatima al-Zahra, their lives are very mysterious. Nobody really knows much about them, where they were born, what their identities were. You know, there's a lot that we don't know about, except for two mothers of the Imams. Here it comes. The first one is for Shahr Banu, and the second one is for Narjis. And why? It's because they were both descendants, or they were both of royalty, number one. Number two, they were both white. Number three, they were also number three, also they were of a superior class and stature. And that is why you will see all the time how they are being shoved down our throats, as opposed to all the other mothers of the Imams. But these two, always, there are movies about them. You know, I don't know if some of you have seen this. There is a movie for children, shows the story of Narjis, that she is a princess, this white, beautiful princess, once upon a time. And yeah, that's how the story goes. So with this, I'm just saying that a person, it's possible that a person's life cannot be recorded, it cannot be documented. It's possible, it makes sense. You know, however, I believe that the reason why the lives of the mothers of the Imams have not been properly documented and recorded, maybe it could be because they lived a very secretive life, or because the Imams were basically oppressed in a position whereby they were not able to do the work of educating and teaching people the same way as Lady Fatima al-Zahra did, you know. So it's possible that a person's life not being known does not necessarily mean that they are a fictional character. But I'm just mentioning that as a red flag to show that this makes the story even more questionable. Because historically speaking, more especially in Islamic literature, if a person is a woman, most of the time, it is very rare to find out their history is detailed, as to where they were born, their lives, their achievements, and all of these things. It's very rare to have that, as opposed to a man. You know, the story of Bilal, for example, is very detailed. There is a lot of detail in the story of Bilal, as opposed to other characters. So that is the third point. Now, the fourth point, which shows you that this story has basically been fabricated. These are the points that I'm going to mention now to prove that this is a clear fabrication. It never really happened. Is number one is that John is a self-hater. He's an Uncle Ruckus. You know, he's an Uncle Tom. He hates being black. The narration goes to the extent where he says that my lineage is of a low. It's la'im. Wa inna hasabi la la'im. You know, so he's saying that being black is being inferior. Now, okay, fine. There are people that can consider themselves to be inferior because they are black. But Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is an infallible Imam. And number two, Imam al-Hussein also, he is Quran al-Natiq, he's the speaking Quran. Why didn't he correct him and say that, John, what you are doing is wrong? We don't believe this. You must be grateful for who you are. You must be grateful that your parents are African. You must be grateful to Allah that Allah has made you the way you are. But unfortunately, John hates himself and he hates being black. Number two in the story is that John says that he stinks. And not only does he say that he stinks, he says that in rihi lanuntin. You know, in Arabic, when you say muntin, something that is muntin, it means that something is like extremely, excruciatingly painful when you smell it. That is the meaning of muntin. Meaning the smell is extremely foul. So now the question that we ask ourselves here is this, is that John, you lived in the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and you lived in the house of Hassan and Hussein. You lived in the house of the people who are descendants of an-nibafatu min al-iman. You know, cleanliness is of faith. But John is saying that he stinks. And why would he say that he stinks, whereas he was raised or he was in a household of cleanliness and purity and hygiene? You know, the household of prophethood. So this clearly shows you that the people who were with him, his masters, as he was their slave, they didn't teach him hygiene. This also is very questionable because it shows you that the infallibles didn't teach him properly. And then he says, Inna hasabi lala'im. Walawni la aswad. And my color is black. Okay, John, no problem. Your color is black. Now that your color is black, your color is black, so we don't have a problem with that. Right. What does he say? He says, Fatanaffas alayya bil jannah. So breathe unto me paradise, Jannah. فَيَطِيبُ رِيحِي وَيَشْرَفُ حَسَبِي وَيُبَيِّضُ وَجْهِي. So, and then if I can enter paradise, I will smell nice. And also my lineage could be of nobility. The other point also to note is that if your lineage is not noble, how will your lineage become noble? Because your lineage is not noble. If I descend from ancestors that are evil, and cruel, and wretched, then my lineage is not noble. How does my lineage become noble? My lineage is not noble. That's it. I can't do anything about my lineage. You know, I can't do anything about my lineage. So how am I going to fix my lineage? By me being a good person? No, I'm not going to fix that. I'm going to be a good person. So myself, I'm going to be the noble one. But that won't make my lineage to be noble. Yes, my good deeds might affect them and might help them in the afterlife and so on and so forth. But it will not make them any more noble. They will remain as ignoble as they are. So here, John, as we can see, we see like a proper Uncle Ruckus. Like this is like a proper Uncle Ruckus, because there is a scene in the Boondocks, the Boondocks anime, where Uncle Ruckus dreams President Ronald Reagan. I'm sure some of you have seen this scene. When he dreams of President Ronald Reagan, and he's so excited to see President Ronald Reagan, and then President Ronald Reagan tells him, "Where's this? What's this?" And he tells him, "This is white heaven." You know what's funny is that this incident of Uncle Ruckus, where he goes to heaven, and then after that, President Ronald Reagan turns him into a white person, and then President Ronald Reagan tells him that you must also tell people to believe in white Jesus, and then therefore they will achieve salvation, and they can be in white heaven as well. It's very interesting that you don't find it in Christian reports or Christian narrations or Christian history, but it is found in Islamic literature. So that's what makes me even more disappointed. So anyway, John goes to the extent of saying here, لا أفارقكم حتى يختلط هذا الدم الأسود مع دماؤكم. I will not separate from you, O Hussein, until this black blood mixes with your blood, implying clearly that Imam al-Hussein is white. With your blood. My blood, which is black, is very inferior. The other point also, which is a red flag, is the corpse changing and being white. This is the narration. The narration says that his body became white. And then his body also smelled like musk. It also shows basically that black people stink, and black people are filthy and inferior. Now we come to the $1 million question, inshallah. So the $1 million question is this: why would fictional characters be created in Islam, and particularly in the whole story of Karbala? Why would that happen? What is the reason for that, and what is the cause for that? So this question is layered in two levels. The first level is, number one, it is for the same reasons why any fictional character would be created. The fictional characters or fictional stories, they are there to inspire. They are there to motivate, you know? So when folklore is being created, you know, if, for an example, we speak about the story of the rabbit and the turtle, or the tortoise, you know, racing, it's a fictional story. But the whole idea is to inspire people, to teach people that just because you're a slow person doesn't mean that you won't be successful in life. You take things at your own pace. You know, so you hear stories about what's his name? I forgot this guy's name. The guy who went up to the sky to fly, and then after that his wings burned. I forgot it, but it's in Greek or Roman mythology or whatever. Icarus, is it Icarus? I don't know. I forgot. But anyway, so and then you get stories about, like, for an example, Hercules, stories about Horus. You get stories, different stories, fictional stories. The whole idea is to inspire people, to teach people something. The only problem comes when the fictional stories are not fictional anymore. So that's the only problem. That's the first reason. The second reason why any fictional character would want to be introduced is for a particular political agenda. You know, in order for one to achieve a certain goal out of creating that particular character. So if you find characters like Shahr Banu, because now you'll understand why. The story of Shahr Banu, its aim is to do two things. To show that white people are superior, Persian people are superior, and that the Ahlul Bayt are of royalty. So number one, white Persian people are superior, and number two, Ahlul Bayt are also superior and are also of a royal stature. You know, so that is why this is something that is the view of Ayatollah Shahid Mutahhari, by the way. Ayatollah Shahid Mutahhari says that this is the reason why descendants of Imam al-Hussein at a certain point in history were referred to as Sayyids. The word Sayyid is a very political word, and even the word Sharif as well. But for now, let us dwell on the word Sayyid. Because the word Sayyid literally means what? It means a master, you know, or it means or it means a king, or it means, you know, somebody of high authority. We use this word in Dua Kumail, for an example, where we say Ilahi wa Sayyidi. You know, so Sayyidi means my master or my king or my authority. So the reason why this fictional character of Shahr Banu had to be created is for Persians to have that thing of we are the ones that are superior, to show superiority. Now, as for John ibn Huwai, why did he become created? Why was his story fictionalized? Why was his story introduced? Now, it is the same. It's for the same reasons that they must show, because naturally, as we know the history, for those of you who don't know this, the Persians or the Iranians, they practiced slavery, or they took slaves from Africa for a long time, quite a long time, you know, for centuries. I remember once, because I believe that certain people, there is a people in Iran, they are called Bandaris. They come from a place called Bandar Abbas, which is the south of Iran. And when I was there, or when I met some of them, I actually thought that they were Iranians. They were the original Iranians of some sort. It's possible that some of them were, the original Iranians, and they moved to the south. Maybe it's possible. We don't know. However, I remember I once met one of them in Karbala. Or in fact, I think, yeah, it was in Najaf. I met one of them in Najaf. So I said, because sometimes what Iranians do, they make fun of dark-skinned Iranians, the dark-skinned Bandaris. So what this guy was saying was that Hamshahri, you know, or Hamshahri means Umkaya, you know. So he was calling me, but he was making fun of his friend, saying that, hey, Umkaya. And then I turned around, I was like, yeah, how are you, Umkaya? And then he was like, yeah, hey, how's it? I'm all right. And then after that, he's like, how do you know Farsi? I'm like, no, I studied in Iran and so on and so forth. The conversation went on. And then I was like, you guys are the real Iranians. You guys are the real Persians. You said, no, we're not the original Persians. I was like, huh? What do you mean you're not the original Persians? He said, no, me, particularly myself and my parents, we come from Zanzibar. And everybody knows that the people who come from, from Bandar Abbas, they were slaves that were taken from Zanzibar, and they were taken to, to Bandar Abbas. I was like, really, seriously? He said, yes, this is something that is centuries old. I was like, wow, I didn't know. So now, if ever Iranians were practicing slavery, naturally, they would have to keep their slaves to be loyal. In order to make them loyal, they would obviously have to teach them certain things of the religious text for them to be obedient to their masters, for them to follow their kings and show them the highest form of loyalty. And that is why you hear the story of, for an example, licking of tables, you know, this also shows you another thing, that why would the imams like allow that for the people that were their servants to do such a thing? You know, it shows you that the imam didn't give enough food to the slaves. You know, so, and we all know that the imams are infallible. Why would they do such a thing? So we can see through a number of levels that this narration is clearly a fabrication. And yeah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Can proceed with the question and answers, inshallah.
يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. Hey, Aish, Uledzente, JG, Bergman, JGZ, Mr. JGZ, Salahu, Ariapu Puchingezo. And Alhamdulillah, thank you very much for the talk. Very interesting. One thing that you mentioned that I remember vividly is Abu Dhar al-Ghafari. Abu Dhar, man, Abu Dhar, yo. Yeah, it must be, it's Salman who was buried by Imam Ali like 20 years, about 20 years before Karbala occurred. But Abu Dhar, man, yo, I remember I read a book about him. I never even saw the Khilafah of Imam Ali, alayhi salam. So how does somebody after,
Yes,
for such a long time, after their master has passed on, they still remain identified by that person? We understand.
and also Khabe, sorry, Khuzan al-Khano. In addition to that, Abu Dhar, there is a narration which is famous in both Sunni and Shia books, because when he was exiled, he was all alone by himself. You know, when he was exiled, he was all alone by himself. He didn't have a helper. He didn't have anybody. When he was exiled, the Holy Prophet predicted that he was going to be exiled. And he said that, Ya Ammar, Ya Aba Dhar, عشت وحيدا وتموت وحيدا وستبعث وحيدا. Or Abu Dhar, you are going to live alone, and you are going to be you're going to die alone, and you are also going to be resurrected alone by yourself. You know, so that hadith is demonstrating the fact that wherever he was, he did not have a slave with him. Although the narration about John says that actually after after he's exiled, after him being exiled, he left and went back to Medina to be with Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein.
Okay, but anyway, like for example, the name of the grandfather of the Holy Prophet, Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib is not his name, like it's not his real name. His name is Shaybatul Hamd. So he was called or nicknamed Abdul Muttalib because he was always with his brother or uncle Muttalib?
Yes.
Yeah, brother or uncle Muttalib.
I think it was uncle.
Yeah, Muttalib.
Yeah.
So he got the name Abdul Muttalib. So why wasn't this guy called Abu Dhar? Why is it John Mullah Abi Dhar? You know, we understand why the change in the way Arabs name their things. You know, it doesn't make sense looking at it from a lexical way. Two very interesting questions. Okay, here thank you very much. Alhamdulillah, benefited a lot. Thank you very much. Wa alaikum salam wa Allah, that sender. Now, this is an interesting question. Now, this is a deep question. How then do we trust a hadith if some of them have been tampered, T-A, not T-E, tampered with? Because if I'm not mistaken, the references are from the same sources.
You can't trust hadith. So basically, we need to rely upon the Holy Quran. You know, so the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it categorically clear, even in the hadith itself. It says that anything that has come to you, man ja'akum anna, whatever that has come to you from us, fa'ariduhu ala al-Quran, then match it with the Holy Quran. So if it goes in accordance to the Holy Quran, then we said it. But if it does not go in accordance to the Quran, then smash it against the walls. That is the hadith, you know. So a hadith, they need to be always put under the microscope of the Quran. That is extremely important, and that is why in the beginning, my first lecture, I spoke about the Quran being immune from everything, because the Quran is infallible. So therefore, we need to constantly refer to the Holy Quran, check a hadith. Does it really match? Does it go in accordance to the Quran? Does it go in accordance to science and logic and so on and so forth? So, yeah, always make sure that it goes in accordance to the Quran.
So to emphasize that, it's very important that we create a very strong relationship with the Holy Quran. Read it every day, recite it every day. I know a brother, not sure if you will like that I mentioned his name, so I'll just say a brother. Every day he reads a page of either tafsir or something, you know, that guides him. So tomorrow when he reads a hadith, he has a map wiggle around it. He's also one of the first people to tell me that John ibn Huwai cannot be a factual character. Oh, yeah, that is this. Based on what our teacher said here, it's very important that we create a relationship with the Holy Quran. We should have halaqat, we should have discussions, we should have this, we should have that. Inshallah ta'ala. If there are any questions from the audience, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or you can text it in. Here's one. My question is, are there no narrations in history that talk about the period of time when the Prophet sent a first and second group of people to Habasha, and what transpired during this period? I remember we spoke about this some time ago. This thing in passing. But inshallah, I'll give the please
Period of time when the Prophet sent the first and second group of transpired during the period. Yeah, there are. There definitely is. So there are numerous reports about the story of, in fact, because as you know, the first thing that happened was the migration. Okay, three things actually happened. The first thing is that the letter was sent. When the letter was sent, there was a good response. And then the Holy Prophet received the message. And then after that, the companions were sent for the migration. That was the second incident. Then the third incident was afterwards, the people from Abyssinia, from Ethiopia, the king himself, Najashi, also sent people, you know, he sent scholars, priests to go to to Medina itself, you know, to meet with the Holy Prophet, to learn and to, to memorize the Quran and so on and so forth. So yes, it's there, it's detailed, it's mentioned in the history books, and you can find it. Okay, not in history books, but you can find it in the books of tafsir. I've seen it in the books of tafsir. Like for an example, if you read the narration that says, or if you read the verse of the Quran that speaks about, and you will find those that are close to you in love are those that believe, those that say that we are indeed Christians, we are indeed the Nasara. That is because among them there are qissisi, there are among them priests, and there are among them ruhban, and there are among them monks. You read the tafsir of that ayah, it says that the Holy Prophet sent about the king of Ethiopia sent about 70 priests and scholars to come to Medina. This is one narration, however. This is one narration. It says that when the king, because the king was also a priest, as I said, historically in Ethiopia, if you rule Ethiopia, you had to be knowledgeable with the scriptures, by the way. But anyway, it's a topic for another day. So he sent about 70 scholars, 70 priests and monks, and they came to Medina. And according to this narration, it says that when Surah Yasin was being recited, the companions or those priests that were sent from Ethiopia, they cried when they heard Surah Yasin for the first time. So there was a lot that happened between Ethiopia and Medina. Yes, I don't know if that answers your question.
Just to add on this, I remember this is some kids in Turkey there's no, from all these reports and records, there is no record that actually shows that they got there and they taught Najashi how to pray. They taught Najashi how to fast. They taught Najashi all these things. So the first time you said it, I was like, and then I promote this book too much, and the guy should give me an endorsement. Buga King, Islam in the Bible. He actually mentions in the Bible, according to the Bible, not in Christianity, two different things. That fasting is actually prescribed for the 9th month, and 9th lunar month. He mentions that all the positions of prayer that we have in our prayers is there. I think I mentioned extensively in many talks, especially in my most recent ones. If there is any question, Bismillah. But that's quite interesting that they never actually taught Najashi how to pray and whatnot, to show you that it's always been one way. It's always been the way of God, all the way. Is there any other question? Is there a question, please? If there is, please ask. Your questions are more than welcome. Any questions? I saw Kimam. Oh, okay. So, doesn't this cancel all those narrations about white people being superior, especially in Islam, rather than the Africans are the first to accept Islam?
Sorry.
Welcome, salam. Sorry. But doesn't this cancel out? This guy's frozen. Yes, definitely it cancels out all the narrations that speak about white supremacy and making white people black. It's like now you go to Arabastat, Lodiam, and someone asks you, "Are you a Muslim?" Oh, recite Al-Fatiha, blah blah blah. You know, you have to prove that you are Muslim. Number one. When did Islam reach India? When did Islam reach? Okay, at that time it was all just one big India. When did Islam reach there? I mean, based on this, Islam even reached Africa before it reached Iran. You know? So the supremacy that people portray is really out of place. It's really, really out of place. Unjustifiable, really. Yeah, it's really unjustifiable. And also from that, from the same narration that prove that Nchinyane thing, who's this? And Najashi, for these people, they went to Najashi. Not all of them returned to Medina. Some of them stayed in Ethiopia. And because of them being there, does this not mean that Islam spread through their efforts rather than the efforts done to, because people like to credit the expansion of Islam to the second Khalifa and whatnot. But those people went there first. Why don't we give them credit for
was there a question? Sorry.
spreading Islam? No. Because Ethiopia does it not cancel out those narrations about white people being superior, especially in Islam? Rather, the Africans are the first to accept Islam and thus superior. And then,
I can't repeat the question.
Oh, okay. Barry, so doesn't this cancel all those narrations about white people being superior, especially in Islam? Rather, the Africans are the first to accept Islam.
That sounds like that.
Yeah, but it's true. I tried to explain for it. But Islam, basically Islam came to Africa before it went even to Persia. But today people want to act superior than us. It came to Africa before it went to India, all that stuff. But anyway, but Masango, Bismillah, okay, Bismillah.
Namfundisi like bengifuna ukubuza ngiyangifrustana because ngiyezwa uSheikh uyakhuluma la umfundisi angisho ukuthi singasambizi ngegama lika Sheikh ngiyamuzwa uyakhuluma but ngibona ngathi Sheikh izinto kakhulukhulu ama-point ongathi uyawaletha kakhulukhulu ama-point okushuthi like ufuna ukushaya direct ngokuthi ezifare the-human sala exist yabona but akunamanye ama-point amanye okushuthi like no-John like they are proud to become a black man. I'm a relation uJohn they are proud to become black. Nah.
The only thing that we have that proves ukuthi began pride. Angizwa na ngoba network yami iyabheda nyana. I don't know ukuthi angizwa. Unfortunately, ngibuzisa ngoba
ngiyakuzwa.
All right. So when it comes to John having pride, there is one line in the poetry that he recites that I strike them with the hand of the black man. Or kayfa yara al-kuffara yadribuha. Kayfa, I forgot what the line goes. Maybe Sheikh Hussein can help me. But like in the English translation, basically just says, look at how the enemy, I wonder how the enemy looks at me when the black man strikes. So that's the only thing we hear. we do not hear anything other than that shows that he was proud of being black. So that's the only sentence or the only phrase that is indicative or somehow vaguely indicative. Yabona ikhomba kancane ukuthi kahle kahle bekane pride nyana ukuthi yabona uyazithanda or as umuntu omnyama.
It still doesn't sound proud to me, because how does the white man feel being struck by a black man? Could he still saying, yeah, no, they're superior, but I am killing them? It's nah. Maybe I'm looking
my argument is that if there was to be something that that indicates black pride, it would be that statement. It would only be that sentence. But other than that, obviously, I mean, he clearly says that he thinks, he clearly says he is black and his lineage is noble. It clearly says that he's been licking the tables of the Imam for food. I mean, that in itself is enough.
All right. Brother Taliwan, Bismillah, you may ask for a question.
No.
I was typing. Salam alaikum. Hey, Jazakallah for the beautiful presentation, sir.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Allah increase you. One, hey, I was already typing it, but two questions, just but it's the same leading up to the other. The first, I mean, we see this perverse white supremacist narrative poisoning all of history, including religious history, you know, as you've proven us. One is it not, especially amongst the Persians and the non so white people, Indians, is it one, are they not also victims of this white supremacist effort to maintain the dominance hierarchy of Begabangam Lapezul, whereby obviously, like you've broken it down the other night, where the caste system is also invented, where, you know, colorism comes into picture, where the lightest skinned Indian also feels superior to the darker skinned Indians. You know, so they also become victims of it, not to say they invent it. And two, so the question there is, are they not also victims of it, not necessarily the main perpetrators of it? And if they're also victims of it, who are the, you know, who's the inventor, and how do we, you know, make sure we deal with the root? Two, I also saw it as you presented it, I also saw it as a almost desperate effort of the white or the non-black races, or whoever is responsible of this poison of racism in history. I also saw it as a desperate effort of self-preservation, you know, which we also have the responsibility to do. So the question here would be, what would you say we must do to also ensure our story, or the story of Black people in Islam, is continued? You know, whether, thank you.
Asante. So yes, regarding the first question, yes, they themselves are also victims. You know, as you said it yourself, the dark-skinned Indians are the victims of white-skinned Indians. Dark-skinned Persians are the victims of light-skinned Persians, and so on and so forth. So definitely they are victims themselves. And if you read about the caste system, even until today, it's still a debate. You know, there are still protests, there are still disputes in India until today about the caste system. You know, and there is a theory as to, this is the question that you asked, as to who invented it. I do not know, but however, I'm just going to mention this theory. There's this theory that says that caste system actually came from India. Racism actually came from India. And there's a lot of evidence for this, by the way. The person who has theorized this is a friend of mine. He has a lot of evidence for this. One of the evidence that he has is that there isn't any record of racism, discrimination of blacks against whites and whites against blacks, except in India in the introducing of the caste system. And as I said, I think I said it yesterday, where I said that racism in itself came later. It came after Christ. It didn't, even before Christ, it wasn't even there. It wasn't racism at all. And if you want evidence and proof for this, is even in the Ptolemaic rule of Egypt. The Ptolemaic people were from Greece. They were Greeks, and they themselves, they never, even when they ruled Egypt, they ruled it for about 300 years. That is why even Cleopatra was white, When they ruled Egypt for 300 years, they didn't intermarry, or they didn't marry with black people. But however, they did rule Egypt. But there was never an issue with the various dynasties that ruled Egypt. What I'm trying to say is that at some point in time, very dark-skinned people ruled Egypt. At some point in time, white people ruled Egypt. At some point in time, light-skinned people ruled Egypt. So that's what happened. So now this friend of mine, he says that no, racism started with the caste system. That's the earliest records. The earliest records of discrimination of people by color is found in India. And hence you get, like, for an example, Hitler, for example, using the whole thing of the Aryan race, and the white supremacy is used through Aryanization. And they say that Aryans are descendants of, India, that the first Aryans came from India. So that's one theory. There's another theory by a scholar called Professor Tariq Antar. So Professor Tariq Antar, he's from Sudan. He says that no, racism actually started by the Turkish Mongolians, or the Turkic Mongolians. So when the Mongolians, when they came from Russia and from very cold regions of the Far East, and they came, various empires, they destroyed various empires, Persian empires, Egyptian empires, Aksumite empire, the Kushite empire, various empires, they infiltrated them, and that's how racism was introduced. So that's another theory. As to which one do I go with, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Haven't made research. Haven't made thorough research on that topic. I hope I answered the first question. The second question is what can we do to preserve our legacy and to preserve our history? And the most important thing is to culturalize everything, to preserve everything in various forms, in our language, number one, by writing books, Black Africans. So one of the things that we do, one of the things that our ancestors did, is that they preserved theology, they preserved beliefs and customs and etiquettes and everything. They preserved it in the language, So you come across very interesting words in the Zulu language, in the Basotho language. I remember just recently I was speaking to my brother, and we were explaining that actually, if you look at the Zulu culture, it preserved, what's the word? I don't want to use the word feminism, but it preserved it had like a feminist approach, even though Zulu people might not be feminists right now. But if you look at, for example, how they refer to their wives, they say a wife is inkosikazi, which means a queen. But you'll never hear in the Zulu language where they refer to the husband as inkosi. You'll never hear that. It's the wife who is referred to as inkosikazi. So this is also an indication how rich the Zulu language is, how actually they looked at women, they perceived women as very special. Why would they refer to the wife as inkosikazi, queen, but they wouldn't refer to themselves as king, you know? So through preserving some of these things, like, well, having koma, you know, writing books and delivering talks about these kinds of things. These are the things that will result in the preservation of our cultures and all of that. So, yeah. Like also like women empowering, not feminist. Like also, if you look at what you call, you know, there are annual traditions, there are annual customs that happen in each and every tribe, or in each and every, among all people. You know, the Ndebele people every year, the Basotho people every year, particularly the Ndebele people, they do this in the winter, you know, because in the winter, it's very hard to do agriculture and farming. So one of the things that they do is that they have a goma. So when they have goma, that's when the kids go, they become men. You know, they are being trained and initiated to become men. You know, they learn stick fighting, how to protect and defend themselves. They learn how to hunt. They are taught their poems and praises of their clans. You know, they are taught so many things. So these are ways in which we can do it as well. You know, it's amazing, it's very interesting that even in Iran, they do this. In Iran, they have an annual poetry competition for Farsi. You know, they have a Farsi poetry competition every year. And sometimes the leader, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, sometimes even attends it, you know. That's also one way we can preserve, the legacy and the heritage of our people. Have poetry competition in the vernacular language, for example. You know, having customs, you know, and practices, annual practices, and so on and so forth. I don't know if I answered your question, Bab Madib.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah.
Oh my God. I'm saying, are there any questions? Inshallah, if there are any, you are more than welcome to ask, so that we can conclude. Kala, this is the last night we are with Brother Ali Nchinyane, so this is our opportunity to learn from him, inshallah. So let's use it wisely. If there is a question concerning the topic that he shared, please ask. I was saying I dropped my mouse, now it's broken. Yeah, are there any questions, inshallah? All right. If there are no questions, then إن شاء الله نتلاقوا بنا Saturday. شيخنا تفضل دعاء من فضلك. كبرت اللي قاعد حبيله. This guy كبرت اللي قاعد حبيله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ركب الله سبحانه وتعالى أرسل الذي بزارنا قوفيل. ركب الله سبحانه وتعالى أرسل مسلم. ركب الله سبحانه وتعالى عرف التوفيق خبرك إلى إسلام وبرك إلى أهل البيت عليهم السلام. الله سبحانه وتعالى بارونا بابا تبفتين الله سبحانه وتعالى بالمنسلب والمبونا بابا الولا الله سبحانه وتعالى أبا على آخر بابا لا تخلين بابا لقب ولا خاي اللي بابا تسبلين خاي due مطلوب وعلم ما في المبونا ركب الله سبحانه وتعالى ولا خاي إن شاء الله أبر من هذا الرواد يسقط الفاتحة بالخير والصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. آمين. اللي بخمنيات الله سبحانه وتعالى. Untuk upon a happy Saturday after 7, inshallah, we will be blessed and graced by our Muallima, our beloved sister, Sister Khadija. See you then. Can't wait. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.